and I knew each other for quite some time. He actually was the co-CEO when SAP bought my prior company, Sybase. Thank you very much, by the way.
Thank you.
So he may not remember. The last time he and I met in person is actually in New York, having lunch at the New York Stock Exchange. And so thank you, Jim, for coming to help us.
John, my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here, and not least for our friendship, John. I appreciate that, and thank you for the report naming the two companies that do this. At Siemens, we say that, when people ask me what do we do, some people think we still make coffee machines. We don't. It just has a brand Siemens, but we actually connect the real and the digital world, and we do that in great partnership with BlackBerry. Now, this conference excited me a lot, so I immediately said yes when John invited because of the theme of trust. I do believe that trust is the necessary ingredient to create the progress that we have in mind and the opportunity that we have. I am very excited about that opportunity because technology is putting us in a place where we can actually create a dramatically better future. But if we don't get the necessary trust in society and in technology, it's not going to work. This morning, I deleted my account on Twitter. It was a big decision for me because I felt it was an important platform, and I am not feeling comfortable anymore in amplifying hate and lies in a way that kills the foundation of our democracy. And that has to do with trust. And therefore, I am super excited to come here and talk about what do we do to create that trust? How do we create trust in human beings so that we can innovate together and find the solutions for the future? And how do we create trust in technology? Because if we don't have trust in technology, we will never get there. Now, I want to start in a completely different place, namely in a race car like this. It's a Formula One car. It's a McLaren. And if you are the pilot of this car, you do need a lot of trust in the car because you're going 300 kilometers an hour up to a corner and there's 19 other cars around you. So it's a pretty scary moment. Now, there are two reasons for me to want to start in Formula One. First of all, in my prior life, I spent a fortune to put that logo on that car. And that car did not run really fast. The McLarens in those days did really slow, and I was getting increasingly annoyed about that. And then I had a call from Ron Dennis, the chairman and CEO at the time of McLaren, and he said, Jim, you shouldn't be so upset about that. It's the only car where you can actually read the logo when it comes driving by. So now in Formula One, there is some uniqueness to the leadership model that they actually live every day. Not only is it a very high performance type of industry, but it's also a leadership style that has two types of leadership. There is the kind of leadership which I would call within the season. That's what I would name a continuous improvement kind of leadership, where you try to cut half of a second of a lap time between two races. There's roughly 20 races in a season, and if you don't cut half a second of a lap time between each of these races, you may win the first race of the season, but you will definitely come last in the last race of the season because everyone is just performing a little bit better all the time. And then something interesting happens. At the end of the season is over, the winner is announced, and then there's a new rule, a new set of rules in a book that everyone gets, and everyone is forced to build a new engine, build a new car, build a new team. It's almost like starting all over again. And Ron Dennis told me this. He said, listen, in Formula One, the fact that we have already won 8 world championships is not correlated with our ability to win the next one. We need to reinvent ourselves again and again and again. Now, I believe this is true in business as well. When you come to these inflection points, and Andy Grove from the IT industry, he cornered this term in his Only the Paranoid Survive, which is a moment in history where your industry is going through such dramatic change that continuously improving what you have does not give you a sustainable competitive advantage anymore. In fact, if you continue to do that, you become better and better in becoming irrelevant. And so you actually have to take a step back and reinvent and start all over, so to say. And this has happened again and again and again in the IT industry. It's now happening in all industries. Now, I believe that we are pretty good at the first type of leadership, the continuous improvement one, because that's how we do business nowadays. We do our budgets next year, which is a little bit better than the last year, and we have our assumptions in our brains, and then we get more and more irrelevant. And it's interesting to see that the companies that find a way to the next season are typically companies that we didn't know existed before, because they kind of just add new rules to the game. And this is the biggest difference between Formula One and business. In Formula One, you get the new book with the new rules and you can apply them. In business, we don't know those rules, we're experimenting. And secondly, it's in the calendar when it happens. In business, we kind of have to keep our eyes on when this is happening. And that makes it super hard and one problem, because most companies don't actually make this. Many of the large companies fail, and you see how the lifespan of large companies is getting shorter and shorter. Clayton Christensen called that the innovator's dilemma. He basically said, the more successful you are, the later you will notice that moment in your business, because you hold on to your success too long. And I thought long and hard about this, and I found two solutions to this problem. The first solution is never be successful, and you don't have this problem. The other solution is that you find a leadership model where you challenge your success when you're at the peak of your success, and at that moment you start innovating at high speed and look around you and get input so that you can find a path to the future. Now, why is this important in today's world? Well, it's been the rules of the game in the IT industry, and John and I have seen that alive, over so many years, but it's now happening in all industries. We are now in 3 inflection points at the same time. We have a globalization that is dramatically changing. I graduated in 1989. I came out of university, I was optimistic and happy, and the Berlin Wall fell, and the world became twice as big, and we could do business everywhere, we could reach markets everywhere, we could get talents everywhere. It was a lot of opportunities. Now we are building walls again. Technology has been the driver of opportunity, not just in the IT industry, but in all industries, and it's only just beginning with generative AI and IoT. We can reach dramatically more value, and yet we are beginning to see how this technology is also killing the foundation of our democracies, which is why I deleted my Twitter account this morning. And we probably have a climate situation which is becoming more urgent than ever before, and we need to get our arms around how do we want to deal with this problem. Each of these inflection points are significant enough to dramatically rethink the business you're in, and if you have all 3 of them at the same time, this is an inflection point. We don't even need help to figure that out. And now we need to figure out, how do we lead the future? How do we shape that future, not just report the past or get concerned about the current? The question is, how do we do that? So, for me, this is really about leadership. And it's the type of leadership that I spoke about in Formula One. Not the one where we continuously improve because we know how to do that already, but the one where we take a step back. I actually believe that if you truly want to shape the future in the industries that you are in, at moments of inflection points, you have to imagine a future that isn't there today, and then calculate backwards to figure out, what do I need to do today in order to shape that future for my company and for my industry? In my mind, this is a very courageous type of leadership, because you are not betting your decisions on the known facts of the past. You're beginning to imagine a future where some people may not even believe you, because that future doesn't exist. But if you do it really convincing, you will inspire people to be part of a journey of transformation and opportunity, one that might create the next phase of life for your company, and maybe even create a better future for society. Now, I'm a chairman these days. I don't run operational companies. I I have the benefit of not having to answer questions. As a chairman, you get to ask the questions. It's a wonderful thing, you know, you should try it. And I have made a rule in my boardrooms that we discuss the past, because we do report the past, you know, every quarter, until lunch. And after lunch, we talk about the future. And then management can decide when they want to have lunch. Just not too late. And with that, we create enough space in that room to imagine a future that's better and discuss what role do we want to play at Siemens or at Northvolt or at C3 AI in order for us to play a significant role in shaping that future. That is the kind of leadership I think we need in this moment in history. Now, what is it, that kind of future that I'm imagining? Well, I have pretty big dreams. I imagine energy systems completely redesigned, based on renewable energy from sources that are free. The raw materials in a wind turbine or in a solar panel is for free. The sun is not being charged. It's actually much cheaper than coal and oil and gas. It's for free. It's very hard to beat for free. We have today the technologies to develop and implement sustainable energy systems where the energy is not only sustainable, it's also available, it is stable, and it is cheap, affordable. The investment to get there is big, but if we do the right kind of investments, and the interesting fact is that a kilowatt hour of energy produced by solar and wind is now cheaper than the one produced by coal. So then we have a situation where the tipping point happens, and of course it would be stupid to invest in the past. You know, the Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stone. Here's an opportunity to create something better and cheaper and more affordable. And this is happening at scale right now. Now that is a future where I could even predict that energy becomes almost for free. Can you imagine that future? By the way, available for everyone, including the 5 billion or 4 billion people who don't have access to energy today. Imagine what that does to the economy and the opportunity for a global business. I also imagine the future of trains and transportation systems. Imagine if transportation was not a wait time in front of the taxi that doesn't show up, but an enjoyable ride where you can get entertained or you can do your business. Siemens just won a train system for Egypt. We're delivering almost 200 trains. Some of them are fast-speed trains. Some of them are cargo trains. Some of them are regional trains. We're building 2,000 kilometers of rails and 60 stations in Egypt. They will have a more modern transportation system than any country in Europe. I don't know about the train system here in the US. Now, when this is implemented, Egypt will have saved 70% of the CO2 emissions on transport of people and goods in their country. Why? Because we have the technologies. The D trains are electric, and they are hydrogen. And with that, we can imagine a transportation system which is much, much better than today. By the way, also very affordable compared to the inefficiency we have in today's world. I imagine manufacturing being completely reinvented to be based on circular systems where we don't dig something out of the ground and then we produce something and we distribute something and we consume something and then we throw it out and create enormous piles of waste and we don't know how to get enough raw materials and we don't know what to do with the waste. What if we could just recycle all of those materials all the time? Northvolt, where I chair a green battery company in Sweden, is designed based on this idea to create green batteries. Not only do we produce them in a factory that uses green electricity, but we take the batteries back after the vehicle has been used for 7 or 10 years. We crush the battery into small powder, and we extract the lithium, the copper, the nickel from the original battery. The atoms are the same quality as the ones you dig out of the soil. Actually, it's cheaper than digging out of the soil if you do it at scale, and suddenly we have a very different paradigm for manufacturing, where we don't use any raw materials and we have zero waste. We just keep using the same atoms. We don't do that in the fossil world. We burn something that then pollutes the world and it's gone. This keeps coming back. It keeps coming back. It's the same quality. And by the way, it's cheaper. I imagine even healthcare reinvented, where healthcare is not about figuring out that you have a disease long too late in terms of trying to fix it and then using generic methodologies to fix it. I imagine healthcare where we individualize the treatment because we know exactly what's wrong with one single individual patient. I imagine even that these devices will keep score of our body, and we'll probably have more sensors in our bodies, and with that we can predict the health issue long before it happens and prevent it. And with an aging population and the costs of healthcare exploding, we can actually create healthier lives at significantly lower cost because we find out the problem before it happens, and therefore we don't have to fix it. We prevent it. These are just 4 examples of what you can imagine when you look into the future and use current technology. In all of these examples, we bet on connecting the physical world and the digital world and intelligence in trusted ways. And when you do that, and you can go through industry by industry by industry, you get a better future. It's more sustainable, it's more affordable, it's more relevant, and we are even healthier longer. What's not to like about that? So the question is, why are we not getting there fast enough? And I see 2 main challenges. The first challenge I see is actually kind of in our brains. It is the essence of the innovator's dilemma, namely that with success comes some assumptions that made us successful, and we have a hard time challenging those assumptions. We don't even know what they are because we don't sit and discuss what is your assumption. This is a great example of wrong assumptions. You've probably heard about solar impulse, this idea to build a plane that can be fueled by the energy of the sun and fly around the world with nothing but the energy from the sun. The sun exposes the Earth with 4,000 times more energy than we consume today as human beings globally. So of course it can fuel a plane like that. I met the co-founder of this project, Bertrand Piccard. He's an unbelievable entrepreneur. I've never met anyone that entrepreneurial as he is. And we talked about the plane and the project and why he did it. And I said, what was your biggest challenge in this project? And he said, well, Jim, it's crazy because it was actually building the physical plane. I thought that would be the easy part, but it turned out to be super difficult. Because in order for the plane to have enough space area for the solar panels, it has to be a very big plane. It actually has a wingspan of an Airbus 380. But the plane itself can only weigh 10% of what a plane of that kind of size would normally weigh, because otherwise it doesn't have weight capacity for the technology. The solar panels are heavy, the batteries are heavy, the inverters are heavy, so the plane itself has to be super light. And he went to all the engineers and the best ones in the aerospace industry, and they all said, with no exception, that's impossible. It can't be done. The plane will collapse in midair. You can't build a plane that's light with that size. And I said, hey, Bertrand, I just saw the plane. I know you flew it. It exists. What happened? What was the miracle? He said, well, I went to the engineers in the yacht industry, those that build high-performance sailboats, because they didn't know it was impossible. You see how our assumptions prevent us from imagining this future? And when we let go and become aware of these assumptions, we need to ask ourselves, what assumptions am I making that made me so successful today may not be true for the future? And how do I reinvent my company based on a new assumption and leverage the fact that I'm successful while I'm doing it? That is one of the problems we need to solve. It's a human problem. It's in our mind, which is why we need more young people in the innovation department, because they don't have these assumptions. They think everything is possible. We need more of those. The second problem we have is actually a physical one. And I have to say that I'm partly guilty, so I'm sorry. It is the complexity of the IT landscapes that we have been building over time. When I started with SAP in 1990 as a trainee, the idea was to put everything in one big system. Great idea, because you wouldn't have all of this chaos. Only then something came along which was called the internet, and we figured out it's here to stay. And with that became this idea of everything in one system completely obsolete. And suddenly we had categories of transactional systems, CRMs and ERPs and supply chain management systems. Some of them moved to the cloud, others didn't. They are all probably moving somewhere. Then we said, wow, how are we going to make sense of all of this? Let's build a layer of analytics. So, SAP bought business objects, and we had one of these, and then suddenly there was the next layer, and the next layer, and we had data storages, we have data lakes. Some of these infrastructures look like Finland, the country of 1,000 lakes. And then on top of that, we're now experimenting with AI. And so there's like at least 1,000 world-class providers of technologies for AI, and we kind of snitch this all together, and we try that we can create trusted, relevant infrastructures that will help us solve these problems. This will not work. Now, I was the chairman of Maersk. A.P. Møller-Maersk is the largest shipping company in the world. It moves 2 million containers a month. Every 15 minutes, a container vessel with a Maersk logo comes to a harbor somewhere in the world. And in 2018, I was at Stanford giving a lecture on how to ask the right questions in the boardroom before and after lunch. And I was called at 3 o'clock in the morning. And somebody said, we have a cyber attack. I said, how bad is it? And the answer was, we don't know. But I'm calling you from my private phone because the phone system is also down. For 10 days, we ran a company that moves 2 million containers a month with WhatsApp as the only application available for people. WhatsApp. Now, in that situation, I was devastated by the impact that this kind of attack can have, but I felt lucky. I felt so lucky that at least we hadn't connected the vessels. So they were operating autonomously on these oceans with 20,000 containers on board, or the cranes that are automated but not running autonomously. Because if we had done that, the implications of this kind of attack would have been catastrophic. Now that is where we are going. Besides all of these layers of physical complexity of systems and connectivities and consistencies or inconsistencies, we are now adding the world of IoT. At Siemens, we have millions of devices connected. All of our trains are connected. We can predict that a door will jam 10 days before it happens. So it doesn't happen when it's driving. It happens when it's standing still, and therefore the utilization of that train is very, very high. We have sensors in all the wind turbines. We have data from every factory robot. All of this is connected. And you imagine what it means in terms of security and surface to protect when you suddenly don't have just at Maersk at the time 45,000 employees who needed a new PC, but millions of things that now can be remote controlled, that are physically pretty dangerous if they are remote controlled in the wrong ways. That is where we are going. If we want to deliver on my vision for the energy systems, for the manufacturing systems, for the transportation systems, for the healthcare systems, or for any of these value chains, it can be so much better if we get our arms around this. Without this, you can forget the whole thing. So, what do we do? How do we get there? Because getting there is super valuable. That is where we need to go. This is how we will improve our societies. Well, I think there are at least two things we need to get straight. First of all, I believe it's more a leadership problem than a technology problem. There are technologies that can help us do this. And I often say that leadership in times of radical change is really about dreams and details. Dreams because we need to inspire people about a future that is much better, and details because if we don't master the critical details that now become more critical, then the dream will just stay a dream, for some, even a nightmare. So what does that mean? Well, I think that it's time for courageous leadership to actually articulate those dreams, to imagine the future of your industry, and to make it better than today because it's more sustainable, it's more affordable, it's more reliable, it's more relevant, and use the technologies to do that. The best example I have is the Kennedy speech, bringing a man to the moon and safely back again. This was an inspiration for an entire nation. Even my parents, they sat in little Denmark in front of a black and white television and got inspired by this idea. Now, what was this all about? It was the vision, the dream, that the US would be the technology leader of the world in a world of Cold War and building more nuclear arms. What if we could be the technology leader of the world? And with this project, I would argue that the US even today is the technology leader in so many fields because of the experiments necessary to make this project a reality. Did you know that the landing module of the Apollo missions had a main memory of 32 kilobytes? That is what we use in a singing birthday card today. Talk about having courage to use that technology to go to the moon and land safely and come back again. That is the kind of courage we need today. We just have much more technology than what they had. And the second thing is the mastering the critical details. Now, we are in a world where we've pretty much mastered this critical detail. This is the persuasion world. This is where platforms are persuading you to have preferences for things you never knew you had preference for, and even deciding who you vote for the next time. Have you ever met Miguela? Miguela is an influencer. She has millions of followers. She doesn't exist in the real world. It's all digital. And there are companies out there who believe that we should make an even better digital world. We call it the metaverse. Yeah? Let's make something, because this world is really bad with all the conflicts and the wars and so on. Why don't we make some dream world where we put on our glasses and pretend we're somewhere else? Now, to master that world, you need AI. They know how to do that. That's how they influence us. By the way, they have these speakers as well. I call them microphones. And with that, they know exactly what we want. And then you master platforms and networks, and eventually you persuade our world to kill itself. If we want to do what I talked about, it's about the physical world. I call it the real-verse. Maybe that's a new term we should corner. The real-verse. This is where we connect reality with digital to make the real world better, not some imaginative metaverse. Now, that is where we need to focus our attention. And to do that, yes, you need AI. But if you don't master security and trust, you will never get there. This is the critical detail. And you must master it to perfection, not some average, just to perfection. So, what does that mean? Well, first of all, I think we need to reduce the complexity of this landscape. There's way too much tools. Everyone is now innovating at high speed with various tools. It's not even clear who has access to which kind of data. And then we do AI on that, and we have even sometimes hard time to understand what is the decision the AI is suggesting. The other day I asked ChatGPT, who is Nikolai Snabe? It's my son, he's 24, and ChatGPT said, oh, Nikolai Snabe, he's the former co-CEO of SAP and now chairman of Siemens. And I'm like, wow, that's impressive, we're 24 years old. Are you sure? And he said, yeah, well, I'm only updated until September 21. I said, yeah, but even that, are you sure you don't mean Jim Snabe? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. And then I asked, who's responsible for your lies? And he said, nobody really. I said, well, who programmed you? Lots of people. Well, what about the CEO? Is he in charge? No, definitely not him. Do you see where I'm going with trust? And the mastering of this world in a world where it really matters. So we take some of that away, and then we add 2 layers to the landscape. I would love to reduce some of this as well, but it's probably too difficult. We need a technology convergence layer that connects the physical and the digital world in a way where we have these things. We get hyper-connected, scalable, secure, trusted, and of course, mobile. That is what BlackBerry is doing. This is the essence Without that, forget about the whole thing. Take your glasses on and pretend you're somewhere else. If you master this, you then add the enterprise intelligence layer, which is where you begin to understand the facts of your company and how it operates with others. And instead of looking back at what happened last quarter, you become predictable. What will happen? Where will I have a failure on my train door? Where would my forecast be for the next quarters? What can I do to improve my supply chain? Where will there be a breakdown? We have predictive capabilities like never before, but only if you get this layer done first. That connects you with the real world. That is when the convergence happens. This is when we unlock incredible value, which we've never seen before. You look at the value of some of these platforms that are persuading us for things we don't need or want, they're very valuable. Imagine you can solve the energy problem, or the manufacturing problem, or the transportation problem, or the healthcare problem, or whatever problem that you're in the real world. The value of that is dramatically higher than persuading someone to love Miguela's clothes. So that we do need to master. Now, why is this so important? Well, many people talk about recession these days. I don't talk about recession. I talk about transition. We are at a global inflection point in 3 dimensions, and instead of talking about deglobalization, I argue we need more global collaboration. We need massive collaboration around the innovations that will bring us to that future, and we need the scale. We only get that through diversity of thought and collaboration across countries. Not less global, but more global. Globalization should not be about where's the workforce cheap, but where's the talent and how do we connect to them. On decarbonization, some talk about this as a cost, and they even say you can't do this unless it's good for your shareholders. I think it's the biggest business opportunity ever. And Northvolt, who created the green battery, has an order book of $55 billion. They've hardly built a battery yet. Do you see how this is becoming the better business model? Not only because it's sustainable, because it's just better. It's cheaper, not more expensive. And finally, on digitization, it is time we bring trust back in technology. If we do that, the opportunities are unlimited. It is your imagination that will be the limitation, not the technology, but you have to master the convergence layer. I will end there and challenge this innovator's dilemma. What if this is the moment that I would call the innovator's opportunity? And let me quote Bernard Shaw, who was often quoted by John F. Kennedy, who said, "Some people see things as they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask, why not?" Thank you very much.